There's been chaos erupting in the United Kingdom with riots over immigration, far-right and immigrant protesters clashing in the streets, quite literally. Let's go ahead and put some of the video our team assembled here. This is just some examples of what's been happening. I will tell everybody how this all kicked off, but in the meantime, what you're watching here is a group of protesters surround a Holiday Inn Express. That hotel allegedly was holding asylum seekers that have been coming to Great Britain. This then erupted into literal street violence with flags and others of the so-called English Defence League and protesters. You then simultaneously saw activated immigrant protesters who took to the streets. There you go. You can see that in front of you. This has spread to multiple kind of working class cities all across the UK, of where immigration and tensions between the population has been high for quite some time. If we think about going all the way back to Brexit and the impetus for that. Yeah, here you see people literally getting beaten up in the middle of the street. It's unclear exactly, you know, who or what is happening here. Then we, of course, a time-honored tradition, looting, literally happening in the middle of these riots. Lots of the so-called, you know, anti-immigrant protesters also just making sure they stop by a grocery store and take whatever they can
chocolatey goodness
for free. Yeah, I'm not sure I'd be taking English chocolate, but hey, that's just me. So what do you think, Ryan?
And so you're also now seeing anti-racist protesters, like explicitly anti-race. They're basically versions of like Antifa over in England are now showing up and doing battle with the far right protesters across England. This all started when, I guess, a little more than a week ago, three girls were killed at a
why don't we put this up there? The Financial Times has a pretty good breakdown. Just go ahead. You can continue speaking.
Yeah, so three girls were killed at basically a Taylor Swift event. Like, it's like a yoga studio or something that was playing like Taylor Swift song or something. Guy shows up, kills three of them.
Not from Rwanda. I think he was born in the UK, but of Rwandan descent.
So immediately, it starts disseminating on Twitter and elsewhere that this was an undocumented illegal immigrant that came in and killed. That was a Muslim illegal immigrant that came in and killed these three girls. Turns out, is a person was born in Wales. From Rwandan parents, and was Christian, actually. And the UK took the rare step of publishing all the information about the suspect. It said, look, it's not true. This is not, it didn't matter. Side note here, if you go back and read the histories of almost every famous riot throughout of American history, but also European history too, even the storming of the Bastille, they all start with, usually, misinformation is not necessarily the right word, but rumors that are incorrect and spread out of control. When they stormed the Bastille, they expected to find like hundreds of
where is everybody?
Political prisoners who'd been abused by the king, and they found like 6 like completely insane people, basically. I mean, I'm oversimplifying here. And they're like, well, nevertheless, let's have a revolution anyway. But you're seeing this like demand for Twitter and others to like stop spreading all this like hateful misinformation, which, let's don't spread hateful stuff, great. But even before social media, whether, whatever it is, like you go back and normally these riots are the result of just word of mouth. And getting the correct information out there didn't matter, because what matters is whether or not you're on a tinderbox here.
Right,
and
the UK powder keg.
The UK is on a powder keg. It's on the one hand, blowback from the British Empire, like going out and, propping yourself up for hundreds of years, based on raping and pillaging around the world, and then taking the refugees from those parts of the country and putting them in your poorest districts back in England. That process is kind of playing itself out without British imperial power anymore.
Yeah, it's a very odd situation. And there's also an economic thing to consider here, is a lot of Americans don't understand how poor British people actually are. British people's GDP per capita is lower than the state of Mississippi. If they were a state in the US, they'd be the 51st poorest state. Well, everybody thinks about London. It's like, well, yeah, that's where the financial and rich elite live, you know, where the king and the queen. The rest of the country
half those
is
are like global elite.
Yeah, if you've ever actually spent time in real England, UK, Scotland, you know, not in the major cities, it's a very poor country. You actually see some of that.
Like, how can you be an empire for so long? And
I can, as you know, there's nothing I love more than dunking on Europeans. That said, if we go back to this, the real, like, and I think there's a lot of dangers here for America, and this is part of the reason why we decided to do this story, is perhaps this could be a precursor to what things are here. When you bring in a bunch of very low-educated, low-skilled workers, and then you also have very stagnant economic growth on top of literal, like, assimilation problems, then you basically set up, you know, the situation where we have right now, where you've had like immigrant enclaves and neighborhoods which don't feel British, even though they may be British citizens or UK citizens in name, and then you have the population itself, which is very angry both about that lack of assimilation, the lack of cultural meshing, on top of the economic problems of literally feeling as if you are in a stagnant country, which is not delivered for you for quite some time. And that's where I think the powder keg comes from more than anything, is the lack of outlook, of growth, and of potential in the UK. And if we think about the economic situation now going into this, these people were crushed by energy prices after the war in Ukraine. Obviously, Brexit, you know, even though I supported Brexit, Brexit turned out to be kind of a nightmare just in terms of the execution of that. The economic prospects of the country, part of the reason that they took it out on the Conservative Party is they're like, hey, you guys are just bandits for the rich. And so they're giving the Labour Party, you know, this massive victory that it's had, but the Labour victory does not paper over the social tensions which have been brewing now in the UK for quite some time. We've seen stuff like this pop off in Ireland too. I don't think it's an accident that it happens at a time of economic stagnation and frankly, like decades of mismanagement of their own immigration policy. Look, they're another country, they can do whatever they want. I'm just saying I wouldn't personally have done it the way that they did.
Yeah. And the Conservative government did not actually even restrict immigration.
Yeah, that's well, that was a huge thing with Nigel Farage and with a lot of the UK rightists, is that they were like, why exactly should we support conservatives? You guys are not even, you know, restricting immigration. Right. Because remember, their asylum situation too is very different. I mean, yeah, we have major border problems here with Venezuela and all the people coming from basically everywhere all across South America, on top of anybody who can buy a plane ticket to Mexico. But, you know, they also have had now a 10-year sustained asylum nightmare with the Syrian civil war, with Afghans, the whole Germany situation in 2015, and they've had major flare-ups. And this was a major contribution, literally, to Brexit, was, you know, was not wanting to be party to EU refugee policy. So I think that what this sets up is, well, A, we saw the death of the Conservative Party and that kind of liberal immigration policy, that's over. Now, though, and this is something funny, I think that the Euro rightists have significantly overplayed their hand because they don't have free speech in England. In England, the major commentators are all calling for Tommy Robinson, who's the former head of the Defense League. He's kind of the one, he's like the king
Far
of
right,
the protesters. He's not even in the country right now. But if we see how the government is responding to this, this is one of the biggest surveillance states in the world, GCHQ, and they have literally no First Amendment, no freedom of speech. All the leading European columnists are calling for his deplatforming off Twitter and for his prosecution.
They're going to throw him in jail.
I genuinely, I don't think he should ever return to England. Like, he is going to prison 100%. And over there with their home office, they don't even need a pretext. They can just imprison you forever.
Starmer alluded to it.
Well, let's get to that. So we have a statement here from the Prime Minister, Keir Starmer. Let's take a listen to what he had to say.
I had a COBRA meeting this morning, which was an opportunity that I took to thank the police for their work over the last few days, to express my support for the police officers who have been injured and the communities impacted by this mindless thuggery. There are a number of actions that came out of the meeting. The first is we will have a standing army of specialist officers, public duty officers, so that we'll have enough officers to deal with this where we need them. The second is we'll ramp up criminal justice. There have already been hundreds of arrests. Some have appeared in court this morning. I've asked for early consideration of the earliest naming and identification of those involved in the process who will feel the full force of the law. And thirdly, I've been absolutely clear that the criminal law applies online as well as offline, and I'm assured that that's the approach that is being taken.
So you saw a little bit of that already. I mean, I think you have quite literally the Labour government in a supermajority in power. Then you've got one of the most oppressive governments in Europe when they want to be. And you don't have to ask me. It's funny. Ask the Islamic population of England what it was like in 2006. Yeah. They can throw your ass in prison, or they can put you under house arrest for no reason and place you under surveillance. And they can even revoke your citizenship if they want to with no trial, as they have done on multiple occasions. So I think they're going to have a similar situation to what we had here, where they're going to use their security state apparatus, architected after the War on Terror, and basically turn it onto their own, right-wing protesters that are in the country. So police state just seems even more likely in the UK after this.
And Starmer said that they were going to make sure that there was accountability for people who instigated this on social media.
Right.
And yes, Tommy Robinson, I think he's in Corsica on vacation or something, but he's been, tweeting up a storm.
Yeah, he's been
he's been sharing a lot of the stuff that, no question he's instigated it. The question is, should that be a prosecutable offense?
Well, as Americans, you and I would say obviously
not. In England, they're like, obviously it should be.
Yeah.
Back
they
to
think
jail.
We're crazy.
Yeah, he's been to jail like 4 or 5 times already.
Yeah, that's right. He has been in prison before. So this is one where, look, I think it's going to be, at the same time, there's a lot of American rightists that are kind of seizing onto this. I just think my only caution...
yeah, they're saying like they're trying to justify the rioting. We live in such an amazing like doom loop.
Look, rioting is bad. I think we should all just probably stick with that. The other thing that I would urge Americans is it's a very different country. It's totally different. It's tiny. Their immigrant population, by and large, is very different from our, at least legal immigrant population. Now, don't get me wrong. I do think it's crazy that 8 to 10 million people are here illegally, but they don't even have anywhere close to the same level of like generational problems and, establishing these like immigrant enclaves, and they have major clashes over religion.
England also doesn't have the whole melting pot mythos.
I was going to say, Margaret Thatcher very famously said, like, America is, what is it? America is built on an idea. Europe is built on history, something to that effect. But it's true. I mean, it literally is a population and place that has all been stratified by like cultural affinity and language going back like 1,000 years. Very different story to assimilate into. On top of stagnating economy, they don't have anywhere close to the same level of GDP growth, that we have, or the mythos. So you take those two things, you're setting yourself up for a real clash here with the immigrant population. So regardless, I do think that the rightists and all these others, the riots are a precursor potentially to some immigrant backlash by conservative voters who lost faith in the conservatives, and they would go towards somebody like Nigel Farage. But in the interim, with the Labour government so solidly in power, the almost certain outcome is that all these people are just going to be thrown in prison.
Massive roundup.
Yeah. So that seems like most likely what's going to happen.
Yeah,
so.
if you're participating in those riots on any side, like there's going to be cameras. Good luck with the masks.
Actually, I believe London was one of the most surveilled cities in the entire world. I'm not sure. So that's the only thing I would challenge. You think they'll even throw the immigrant rioters in prison?
Yeah.
Oh, that's so. Well, we'll see. We'll see.
Not?
That'll be a good test.
Yeah.
As to whether there will be equal application of the law. A lot of the Euro rightists don't think that they will. They think that they'll let them go and
they misunderstand the center.
You think so?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I'll hold you to it. Hey, if you like that video, hit the like button or leave a comment below. It really helps get the show to more people.
And if you'd like to get the full show ad-free and in your inbox every morning, you can sign up at breakingpoints.com.
That's right. Get the full show, help support the future of independent media at breakingpoints.com.